The Boston skyline glittered like black glass embedded with diamonds against the night sky. Rain pelted the windshield of the gleaming Porsche as Elizabeth Armstrong navigated through the winding roads outside the city. The windshield wipers worked frantically to maintain visibility, but the downpour was relentless. As CEO of Armstrong Biomedical, one of the leading medical technology companies in the country, Elizabeth was accustomed to navigating treacherous situations. Tonight, however, nature seemed determined to challenge her control. Her phone rang through the car's speakers. Jessica, her executive assistant, never seemed to sleep. "The board wants your decision by tomorrow morning, Liz. Cambridge Pharmaceuticals increased their offer to $3 billion." Elizabeth's knuckles whitened around the steering wheel. "Tell them I'm not selling the kidney therapy research. Not at any price. They won't be happy." Richard is already rallying support against, "I didn't build this company to sell life-saving treatments to the highest bidder, Jessica." Elizabeth's voice cut like steel through the rain-filled cabin of her car. "Some things matter more than profit margins." The call ended, and Elizabeth exhaled slowly, trying to release the tension that had built in her shoulders. The board didn't understand. They couldn't. None of them had watched their little sister waste away from kidney disease at age 9 for Vonnemon. None of them had promised a dying child they would find a way to make sure no one else suffered the same fate. The rain intensified sheets of water cascading across the windshield. A deer suddenly appeared in the headlights, frozen in terror. Elizabeth swerved instinctively too sharply. The Porsche hydroplane spinning across the slick asphalt. Her world tilted and blurred as the car left the road, tumbling down an embankment before crashing against a tree. Pain, sharp and immediate. Glass shattered around her like a deadly constellation. Elizabeth felt something warm trickling down her face. Blood. The airbag had deployed, but a large shard of glass had embedded itself in her arm. She tried to reach for her phone, but it had been thrown from the center console. Darkness crowded the edges of her vision as shock set in. The last thing she registered before unconsciousness claimed her was the rhythmic drumming of rain against the crumpled hood of her once pristine car. Michael Hayes pulled his weathered Honda Civic into the hospital parking lot 15 minutes early for his night shift at Boston Memorial. 8 years as an ER nurse had taught him the value of preparation. The rain beat a steady rhythm on the roof of his car as he sat finishing the last sips of coffee that would fuel him through the 12-hour shift ahead. His phone rang. Sophie, the college student who watched his daughter Lily after school, was calling. "Mr. Hayes, I'm so sorry, but my roommate just tested positive for flu and Lily's immune system." "Say no more." Michael's heart sank, but he kept his voice steady. "You did the right thing calling me. I'll figure something out." He ended the call and rested his forehead against the steering wheel. Lily's kidney disease meant even a common cold could land her in the hospital. He couldn't risk exposure, but finding last-minute childcare was nearly impossible. He scrolled through his contacts, knowing before he started that there would be no solution. His ex-mother-in-law was in Florida. His neighbor, Mrs. Petrovich, was visiting her daughter. The other nurses with children were already on shift. The rain seemed to grow heavier, matching his mood. 8 years as a single father had taught Michael that sometimes there were no good options, only necessary ones. He would have to bring Lily to the hospital and hope Dr. Winters would understand. Again, lightning flashed, illuminating the road ahead as Michael drove toward home. Through the curtain of rain, he spotted headlights pointing at odd angles down an embankment. Instincts honed by years of military service and emergency medicine kicked in. He pulled over, grabbing the emergency medical kit he kept in his trunk, and ran toward the wreckage. The black Porsche was crumpled against a tree, steam rising from the hood. Michael approached cautiously, calling out but receiving no response. He peered through the driver's side window. A woman early to mid-30s was slumped against the deployed airbag, a nasty gash on her forehead, and a large piece of glass embedded in her right arm. She was unconscious, but breathing. Michael tried the door. It was jammed. He moved to the passenger side, which opened after a firm tug. Carefully, he reached across to check her pulse. Strong but rapid. The woman stirred at his touch, her eyes fluttering open. They were a startling blue, clouded with pain and confusion. "Don't move." Michael kept his voice calm, professional. "I'm a nurse. You've been in an accident. Can you tell me your name?" "Elizabeth." Her voice was barely audible over the rain. She tried to move and winced as the glass in her arm shifted. "Elizabeth, I need you to stay very still. There's a piece of glass in your arm that needs to be stabilized before we move you." She nodded slightly, then her eyes widened as she seemed to fully register the glass protruding from her arm. Michael quickly but carefully began assessing her injuries. No signs of spinal trauma, pupils equal and reactive. The forehead laceration was superficial. The glass in her arm was the primary concern. I need to stabilize this before the paramedics arrive. It's going to hurt. Elizabeth's jaw tightened. Do what you need to do. Michael opened his kit and removed gauze pads and tape. As he began to work around the glass, securing it in place, Elizabeth inhaled sharply. Easy. It hurts. The words escaped through gritted teeth. Michael paused, his eyes meeting hers. It'll be quick. I do this every day. Something passed between them in that moment, a connection, a recognition. Then Michael returned his attention to the wound. In the distance, sirens wailed, growing louder. By the time the ambulance arrived, Michael had stabilized. Elizabeth monitored her vitals and kept her conscious and talking. The paramedics took over, transferring Elizabeth to a stretcher. As they loaded her into the ambulance, Michael provided a concise report of her condition and the first aid he'd administered. "Where are you taking her?" he asked. "Boston Memorial." Michael nodded. "I work in the ER there. I'll check on her when my shift starts." The paramedic gave him a thumbs up as the doors closed. Michael stood in the rain for a moment, watching the ambulance pull away, its lights cutting through the darkness. He glanced at his watch and swore under his breath. He would have to hurry if he was going to pick up Lily and still make it to his shift on time. 20 minutes later, Michael pulled into his modest apartment complex. As he hurried up the walkway, the door to his first-floor apartment opened, and Lily stood there, her small frame backlit by the warm glow of the living room lamp. At 8 years old, she already had an old soul, a product of too many hospital stays and a life punctuated by medical terminology most adults couldn't pronounce. "You're all wet, Dad." Lily's brown eyes, so like her mother's, looked him over critically. "Just a little rain." Michael knelt down and gave her a quick hug. "Listen, sweetheart, Sophie can't come tonight. Her roommate's sick." Lily's face fell, then quickly composed itself with a maturity that sometimes broke Michael's heart. "So, I get to go to the hospital with you again?" It wasn't a question. She was too familiar with the routine. "Just for tonight, I already packed your backpack with books and your tablet and your meds." Lily nodded, already moving to get her coat. Michael watched her guilt and pride wrestling in his chest. She deserved a normal childhood, not one dictated by medication schedules and her father's erratic work hours. But since Jennifer's death 4 years ago, he'd done the best he could. Some days that felt nowhere near enough. Boston Memorial's emergency department was running at typical capacity when Michael arrived with Lily in tow. Dr. Winters, the night shift attending physician, spotted them immediately. "Hayes, my office, 2 minutes." His tone was neutral, but Michael knew what was coming. "Wait for me at the nurse's station, Lily. Marjorie will get you set up." He watched as his daughter approached the charge nurse, who greeted her with a warm smile. Lily was something of a mascot in the ER, known by all the staff who had treated her during various kidney-related crises over the years. In Dr. Winter's office, Michael didn't wait for the lecture to begin. "Sophie canceled last minute. Her roommate has flu. I couldn't risk Lily's exposure with her immune system." Dr. Winters sighed, removing his glasses to rub the bridge of his nose. "I understand your situation, Michael, but having a child in the ER is against protocol, I know." Michael stood straight, shoulders back, a habit from his military days. "I'll make sure she stays out of the way. I always do." "That's not—" Dr. Winters stopped, clearly recognizing a losing battle. "Fine, but this can't become a regular occurrence again. Figure something out, Hayes. I'm saying this as much for Lily's sake as for hospital policy." Michael nodded, already turning to leave. "I'll work on it." Out at the nurse's station, Lily had settled into a chair with her tablet. She looked up as Michael approached, a question in her eyes. He gave her a reassuring smile, one that didn't quite reach his eyes. "All good, kiddo. I've got to get changed and start my shift. You know the rules. Stay at the nurse's station, don't wander, don't bother anyone who looks busy." Lily recited the familiar litany. "Dad, I'm 8, not 4. And smarter than most 18-year-olds, still doesn't change the rules." He ruffled her hair, then headed to the locker room to change into scrubs. When he emerged, Marjorie handed him his first patient assignments. Bed 3, possible appendicitis. Bed 5, chest pain waiting on labs. And your car crash victim is in trauma 1. She's stable, waiting for the plastic surgeon to remove the glass. Michael paused. The woman from the Porsche, she's my patient. Chart says Michael Hayes provided emergency care at scene. Seems fitting you should follow through. Marjorie raised an eyebrow. Unless there's a problem. No problem. Michael took the tablet with Elizabeth's information. I'll start with her. He made his way to Trauma 1, reviewing Elizabeth's information as he walked. No last name listed yet. Apparently she'd been admitted without identification. Preliminary assessment showed no injuries beyond the forehead laceration and the glass embedded in her arm. Extraordinarily lucky considering the state of her vehicle. Elizabeth was awake when Michael entered, her gaze sharp despite the circumstances. The hospital gown made her look smaller, more vulnerable than she had appeared in the wreckage of her expensive car. The glass shard still protruded from her arm, now surrounded by proper medical stabilization materials. Good to see you conscious, Michael said, approaching the bed. I'm Michael Hayes, one of the nurses who will be taking care of you tonight. We actually met earlier. I was the one who found you on the road. Recognition dawned in her eyes. You're the nurse who helped me at the accident. Thank you. Just doing my job. Michael began checking her vitals. The plastic surgeon is on his way to remove the glass. In the meantime, how's your pain level? Manageable. Her voice was stronger now, cultured with the confidence of someone accustomed to being in charge. On a scale of 1 to 10, a slight smile touched her lips. A nurse who doesn't accept manageable as an answer. 6, maybe 7 when I move. Michael nodded, making a note in her chart. I'll get you something for that. Dr. Winters ordered morphine, but I need to know if you have any allergies. None that I'm aware of. As Michael prepared the medication, Elizabeth studied him. You seem very efficient. 8 years in the ER, 4 before that as an Army medic. Michael administered the morphine through her IV. This should help quickly. Army medic, Elizabeth repeated. Afghanistan. 2 tours. She nodded as if confirming something to herself. It shows. There's a steadiness about you. At the crash site it was. She paused, seeming to search for the right word. Reassuring. Michael was saved from responding by his phone vibrating in his pocket. A text from Marjorie. Lily asking for med. Time for evening dose. Excuse me, he said. I need to check on something. The morphine should kick in soon. Dr. Reynolds, the plastic surgeon, should be here shortly. Elizabeth seemed about to say something else but nodded instead. Michael left, heading back to the nurse's station where Lily sat with her medication schedule pulled up on her tablet. It's time for the anti-rejection meds, Dad. Lily's voice was matter-of-fact, as if discussing homework rather than the drugs that kept her body from attacking the donor kidney she had received 2 years ago. Michael took the pill container from his locker and handed Lily her evening dose with a cup of water. How are you feeling? Any nausea today? A little this morning, but it went away. Lily swallowed the pills with practiced ease. I'm bored, though. Can I walk around a little, just to the vending machines and back? Michael hesitated. The ER was relatively calm at the moment, and the vending machines were just down the hall. Straight there and back. Nowhere else. Lily's face brightened. Thanks, Dad. Can I get you anything? I'm good, sweetie. Don't dawdle. As Lily headed down the hall, Michael turned back toward Trauma 1, but was intercepted by Dr. Winters. Hayes Bed 3's appendicitis is confirmed. She's heading to surgery. I need you to prep her. For the next hour, Michael was fully engaged in patient care, moving efficiently between assignments. By the time he returned to check on Elizabeth, Dr. Reynolds had arrived and was preparing to remove the glass from her arm. Mr. Hayes, perfect timing, Dr. Reynolds said. I could use an extra pair of hands. The procedure went smoothly. The glass had caused a deep laceration, but had miraculously missed major blood vessels and tendons. As Dr. Reynolds finished the last sutures, Michael assisted with the dressing. You'll have a scar, Dr. Reynolds told Elizabeth, but with proper care it should fade significantly over time. Elizabeth nodded, her eyes slightly unfocused from the medication. Thank you, doctor. You were very lucky, Dr. Reynolds continued. The accident could have been much worse. Do you have someone who can drive you home when you're discharged? Elizabeth's expression changed, a flicker of something loneliness perhaps crossing her features. I'll call my assistant. He nodded and left to complete his paperwork. Michael remained adjusting Elizabeth's IV and checking her vitals once more. Is there someone we should call for you in the meantime, he asked. Family, friend, no. The word was clipped definitive. Then perhaps, recognizing her tone, Elizabeth softened slightly. My family isn't. We're not close. And friends are a luxury in my line of work. Michael didn't pry further. Everyone had their stories, their private pains. In the ER, you learn to respect those boundaries while still providing care. Well, you'll need to stay overnight for observation given the head injury. I'll make sure you're comfortable. As Michael turned to leave, Elizabeth spoke again. Your accent, it's not Boston. Midwest. Indiana. Small town you've never heard of? What brought you here? The question was innocent enough, but it brushed against memories Michael preferred not to disturb. A change of scenery after the Army. Boston has good hospitals, good schools. He kept his tone neutral, professional. Elizabeth seemed to sense his reluctance. I'm keeping you from your other patients. Thank you again, Mr. Hayes. Michael nodded and left the room. In the hallway, he took a moment to roll his shoulders, releasing some of the tension that had built there. Something about Elizabeth unsettled him, not in an unpleasant way, but in the manner of a puzzle piece that doesn't quite fit, yet suggests a pattern just beyond recognition. Returning to the nurse's station, he found Lily engaged in conversation with a young resident, Dr. Chen, who was showing her x-rays on a tablet. See how the bone knits itself back together, Dr. Chen was saying. The body has amazing healing capabilities. Lily was fascinated, her eyes wide with interest. Is that why my anti-rejection meds have to suppress my immune system? Because it's too good at healing. Chen looked momentarily taken aback by the sophisticated question from such a young child. That's actually a very good way of putting it. Your immune system is so efficient, it would attack your new kidney thinking it was an invader. Michael approached, a surge of pride washing over him. Despite everything, the endless hospital stays, the medications, the limitations on her childhood, Lily had developed a keen intellect and curiosity about the world, particularly medicine. Learning something new, he asked. Lily turned, her face animated in a way it rarely was outside discussions of science. Dr. Chen is showing me how bones heal. Did you know osteoblasts build new bone tissue while osteoclasts break down old bone? It's like construction and demolition happening at the same time. Sounds fascinating. Michael exchanged a grateful look with Dr. Chen. But it's getting late and you should try to get some sleep. Dad, it's only 9:30. And your medication schedule doesn't care what time it is. You know how it affects your energy levels. Lily sighed dramatically but didn't argue further. Can I at least get a snack first? I'm hungry. Let me check on one more patient, then we'll find you something to eat. As Lily returned to her tablet, Michael made a quick round of his assigned patients. Everything was stable for the moment, a rare luxury in the ER. He was heading back to collect Lily when he passed Trauma 1 and noticed Elizabeth attempting to reach the water pitcher on her bedside table, wincing as the movement pulled at her injured arm. Michael stepped in and moved the pitcher closer to her. You should be resting that arm. Elizabeth looked up, surprised by his sudden appearance. Sorry, thirsty. Michael poured her a cup of water. The medication can do that. Small sips are better. She nodded, accepting the cup. Thank you, again. She took a careful drink. You're very attentive. It's my job. No, most people do their jobs. You care. She said it with a hint of wonder, as if the concept was novel to her. Before Michael could respond, a small voice came from the doorway. Dad, are we getting food now? Both adults turned to see Lily standing there, her backpack slung over one shoulder. Elizabeth's expression softened immediately. You must be Lily, she said, surprising both Michael and his daughter. Lily looked at her father questioningly. How did you know her name? Michael asked, a protective edge in his voice. Elizabeth's smile was apologetic. I overheard the charge nurse talking to her earlier. Michael's daughter was mentioned. Michael relaxed slightly but made a mental note to remind Lily about staying at the nurse's station. Lily, this is Elizabeth. She was in a car accident tonight. I helped her at the scene. The Porsche crash? Lily asked, her eyes widening. Marjorie said it was totally wrecked, but you weren't badly hurt. That's statistically unlikely. Modern safety features must have functioned optimally. Elizabeth's eyebrows rose clearly, surprised by the sophisticated observation from an 8-year-old. They did indeed. The car did its job. Lily, Michael said, using his warning tone, we shouldn't be bothering Elizabeth. She needs rest. It's fine, really. Elizabeth said quickly. I was getting tired of staring at the ceiling. She turned her attention to Lily. Your father mentioned you were here because your regular sitter canceled. Something about flu exposure. Lily nodded. I have to be careful about infections. I had a kidney transplant 2 years ago. Lily, Michael began uncomfortable with how much personal information his daughter was sharing with a stranger. But Elizabeth was nodding with interest. Transplants are fascinating. The body's ability to accept foreign tissue through immunosuppression is one of medicine's great achievements. Lily's face lit up. That's almost exactly what I was just learning about with Dr. Chen, how the immune system can be too good at its job. It is remarkable, Elizabeth agreed. Are you interested in medicine? Lily, Michael interrupted. Elizabeth needs her rest, and you need a snack before your next dose. Elizabeth looked at Michael, then back to Lily. Perhaps before you go, you could tell me what you're learning. I work in medical research, and I always appreciate a fresh perspective. Michael was about to object again, but the excited expression on Lily's face stopped him. It was rare for her to have the opportunity to discuss her interest with someone who genuinely seemed to care. Go ahead, Lily. 5 minutes. Then snack and meds. Lily beamed and approached Elizabeth's bedside. I'm reading about kidney function and how artificial kidneys work compared to real ones. Did you know dialysis machines still can't do everything a real kidney does? That's why transplants are better even though they're harder to get. Elizabeth nodded, her expression genuinely engaged. That's exactly right. Dialysis is remarkable technology, but it only replaces about 10–15% of kidney function. What interests you most about kidneys? Finding ways to make better artificial ones, I guess. Or maybe making transplants easier to get. Lily's voice grew quieter. I was on dialysis for a year before my transplant. It was not fun. Michael watched the exchange, surprised by Elizabeth's ease with Lily. Most adults either spoke to her as if she were a toddler or were uncomfortable with her medical knowledge and maturity. Elizabeth did neither, addressing her as an equal with valuable thoughts and perspectives. That's a worthy goal, Elizabeth was saying. The wait list for kidney transplants is far too long. Lily nodded solemnly. Over 90,000 people in the United States alone. Dad says I was lucky. Your dad is right. Elizabeth glanced at Michael. But I suspect it wasn't just luck. He seems like someone who would move mountains to take care of you. Something in her tone made Michael shift uncomfortably. There was an insight there, a perception that felt too accurate from someone who had just met them. Time's up, Lily, he said. Let's get that snack now. Elizabeth needs to rest. Lily looked disappointed but didn't argue. It was nice meeting you. I hope your arm feels better. It was lovely meeting you too, Lily. Thank you for the fascinating conversation. As Michael led Lily toward the door, Elizabeth called after them. Mr. Hayes, thank you again for everything tonight. Michael nodded, oddly affected by the sincerity in her voice. Just doing my job. In the hospital cafeteria, Lily munched happily on a sandwich, while Michael sipped coffee, his mind still on the exchange with Elizabeth. She's nice, Lily said, breaking into his thoughts, and smart, not fake nice like some grown-ups. Michael's non-committal response didn't deter Lily. She works in medical research. I wonder what kind, maybe kidneys, since she knew so much about them. Most medical professionals know about kidneys, Lily. Not like she did. She understood things regular doctors sometimes don't. Lily took another bite of her sandwich. I like her. Michael studied his daughter, recognizing the gleam in her eye, the one that appeared when she'd found a new subject to investigate. She's a patient, Lily. Not a science project. I know that. Lily rolled her eyes in the universal expression of children who think their parents are being deliberately obtuse. But she's interesting? Don't you think she's interesting? Michael considered the question. Elizabeth was undeniably intriguing, intelligent, perceptive, with a complexity that suggested depths beyond her polished exterior. But she was also clearly wealthy, used to power and privilege, the type of person who inhabited a world far removed from his own. She seems nice enough, he said neutrally. Finish your sandwich. We need to get back upstairs. The remainder of the night shift passed in the controlled chaos typical of an urban ER. A multi-car pileup on the highway brought in 6 new patients, keeping Michael busy until well past midnight. Lily eventually fell asleep on a cot in the break room, her books still open on her chest. Michael checked on her between patients, tucking a blanket around her shoulders, and making sure her medication schedule was maintained. It was nearly 3 in the morning when things finally calmed down enough for Michael to take a short break. He stepped outside for a moment, breathing in the cool night air. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a clean, washed scent and a sky dotted with stars. His phone vibrated with a text from Dr. Winters. "Patient in trauma 1 asking for you." Michael frowned. Elizabeth should have been sleeping. He made his way back inside into her room. She was sitting up in bed, looking remarkably alert for someone who had been in a serious accident and given pain medication. "You asked for me." Michael kept his voice low, mindful of the late hour. "I couldn't sleep," Elizabeth said, "and I had a question I wanted to ask you." Michael approached the bed, checking her IV and vitals out of habit. "Everything looks good. What's your question?" Elizabeth hesitated, which struck Michael as uncharacteristic based on their limited interactions. "Your daughter Lily, she mentioned she was on dialysis for a year before her transplant." It wasn't a question, but Michael nodded. "She was. And she's taking anti-rejection medication now. For how long?" "For life." Michael's voice was even, but his guard was up. "Why are you asking about my daughter's medical history?" Elizabeth seemed to recognize his concern. "I'm sorry, that was inappropriate. It's just—" She paused, then continued more carefully. "Armstrong Biomedical, where I work, is developing a new therapy for kidney disease, particularly focused on reducing rejection rates in pediatric transplant patients." Michael's wariness increased. "You're a doctor?" "No." Elizabeth seemed to be weighing how much to say. "I'm in research administration. The project is personal to me. My sister had kidney disease. She didn't survive." The admission softened Michael's defensiveness slightly. "I'm sorry for your loss. It was a long time ago." Elizabeth's gaze was direct, unflinching. "But it's why I do what I do now. Your daughter reminds me of her. The same curiosity, the same resilience." Michael nodded, understanding the connection, but still uncertain about Elizabeth's interest. "Lily's been through a lot, more than any kid should have to. She's fortunate to have you." Elizabeth's expression was earnest. Not every child with serious medical issues has a parent so dedicated. The compliment made Michael uncomfortable, not because it wasn't sincere, but because it struck too close to his deepest insecurities. He changed the subject. "You should try to sleep. The body heals better with rest." Elizabeth seemed about to say something else, but nodded instead. "You're right. Thank you for checking on me." Michael turned to leave, but Elizabeth spoke again. "Mr. Hayes, Lily mentioned something about the cost of her medications. That must be challenging on a nurse's salary." Michael stiffened his back to Elizabeth. "We manage." "I didn't mean to overstep. It's just that our company has a foundation that provides assistance for families dealing with kidney disease, particularly transplant recipients." Michael turned back, his expression carefully controlled. "That's very generous, but we're doing fine." Elizabeth held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded. "Of course. Good night, Mr. Hayes." As Michael left the room, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to Elizabeth's interest in Lily than simple compassion or professional curiosity. It made him uneasy, this attention from a stranger who clearly moved in circles of wealth and influence, far removed from his own. Back at the nurse's station, Michael checked on Lily, who was still sleeping soundly in the break room. Then he reviewed Elizabeth's chart, searching for more information about this woman who had appeared so suddenly in their lives. There was nothing beyond the basic intake data. No emergency contact, no insurance information yet, just a first name and the details of her injuries. It was as if Elizabeth had fallen from the sky into that crashed Porsche, a mystery wrapped in expensive clothes and perfect diction. The remaining hours of his shift passed quickly. By the time dawn broke, casting long golden rays through the hospital windows, Michael was completing his handover to the day shift nurses. Lily had woken up slightly disoriented, but quickly adapting to her surroundings as she always did. "Can we check on Elizabeth before we go?" she asked as Michael gathered their belongings. "She's probably sleeping, Lily. We could just peek in to see if she's okay." Michael hesitated, then nodded. "Just a quick look. No waking her if she's asleep." They walked quietly to Trauma 1. The door was partially open, and Michael could see Elizabeth sitting up in bed, speaking to someone. As they got closer, he realized it was Dr. Winters. "Absolutely unacceptable," Elizabeth was saying, her tone completely different from the one she had used with Michael and Lily. This was the voice of someone accustomed to command to being obeyed without question. I've been here for hours without proper identification. My assistant should have been contacted immediately. Ms. Armstrong, I understand your frustration, Dr. Winters was saying, his tone placating. But you arrived without identification and your phone was destroyed in the accident. We had no way to... Armstrong, Michael whispered the name, triggering a memory. Elizabeth Armstrong. Lily looked up at him curiously. Do you know her dad? Before Michael could answer, a woman in an impeccable suit brushed past them into the room. Elizabeth, my God, I've been trying to find you all night. The car's GPS stopped transmitting, and when you didn't arrive at home... Jessica. Elizabeth's voice cut through her assistant's panic with practiced ease. I'm fine, but I need you to sort out this disaster immediately. Call Gerald and have him bring the helicopter. I want to be transferred to Mass General within the hour. Michael took a step back, pulling Lily with him. Elizabeth Armstrong, CEO of Armstrong Biomedical, one of the wealthiest women in Massachusetts. He had read about her in the Boston Globe just last week, a profile highlighting her company's meteoric rise and her reputation as a brilliant but ruthless businesswoman. And he had been treating her like any other patient, even chiding her for asking too many questions about Lily. Dad? Lily was tugging at his sleeve. What's wrong, Tom? Nothing, sweetheart. It looks like Elizabeth is busy. We should go. But before they could retreat, Elizabeth looked up and spotted them. For a brief moment, surprise and what might have been embarrassment flashed across her face. Then her expression smoothed into professional courtesy. Mr. Hayes? Lily, good morning. Dr. Winters turned clearly surprised to see them at the door. Hayes' shift ended. Michael nodded. Just on our way out. Elizabeth looked at Jessica, then back to Michael and Lily. Before you go, I wanted to thank you both again, particularly you, Mr. Hayes. Your quick action at the accident site may have saved my life. Her tone was warm but formal, a clear shift from their earlier interactions. This was Elizabeth Armstrong, CEO, not the vulnerable woman in a hospital gown asking about kidney disease research. Just doing my job, Michael said for the third time that night, the phrase now feeling like a shield between them. Elizabeth seemed to sense his discomfort. Nevertheless, I'm grateful. She turned to Lily. And thank you for our fascinating discussion, Lily. You have a remarkable mind. Lily beamed at the compliment. Thank you. I hope your arm gets better soon. I'm sure it will. Elizabeth's smile was genuine, but contained professional. Best of luck with your continued recovery as well. Michael placed a hand on Lily's shoulder. We should go. You have a busy day ahead, Ms. Armstrong. Something flashed in Elizabeth's eyes, disappointment perhaps, but she nodded. Of course. Good day, Mr. Hayes. Lily. As they walked away, Michael could hear Dr. Winters apologizing profusely for not recognizing such an important patient while Jessica was already on the phone arranging the helicopter transfer. Dad, Lily looked up at him as they headed for the exit. Why did you get all weird when you found out her last name? Michael sighed. Elizabeth Armstrong is a very important person, Lily. She's the CEO of a huge medical company. Oh. Lily considered this. Is that why she knows so much about kidney research? Probably. So she's super rich? Yes. Lily was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Does that matter? The question in its childlike directness caught Michael off guard. Did it matter in practical terms? Yes. Elizabeth Armstrong inhabited a world of boardrooms and billion-dollar decisions while he struggled to make ends meet on a nurse's salary. But in terms of human connection, the way she had spoken to Lily with genuine interest, the vulnerability she had shown after the accident, it shouldn't, he said finally, but sometimes it does. Lily nodded, accepting this complicated answer with her usual equanimity. I still like her, rich or not. Michael smiled despite himself. Come on, kiddo, let's get you home and catch up on some sleep before school. As they exited the hospital into the bright morning sunshine, Michael couldn't help glancing back at the building. Somewhere inside, Elizabeth Armstrong was probably already conducting business, the accident becoming just another inconvenience in her carefully managed life. He doubted their paths would cross again. Their worlds were simply too different. And yet, as he drove home with Lily dozing in the back seat, he found himself remembering the moment at the accident site, her voice tight with pain. Easy. It hurts. and his response instinctive and steady, "It'll be quick. I do this every day." A week passed, returning Michael and Lily to their normal routine. Michael worked his shifts at the hospital, constantly juggling to ensure Lily had proper care during his hours away. Sophie had recovered from her illness scare and resumed her after-school duties, giving Michael some breathing room in his schedule. Lily's health remained stable, a blessing he never took for granted. Each morning without nausea or fatigue, each normal lab result was a victory in their ongoing battle against her condition. The kidney transplant had transformed their lives, taking Lily from a child tethered to dialysis machines to one who could attend school regularly and participate in limited activities with her peers. But the sword of Damocles still hung over them. The anti-rejection medications were expensive, even with insurance. The regular checkups, lab work, and occasional hospitalizations for minor infections strained their budget to the breaking point. Michael picked up extra shifts when he could, carefully balancing the need for additional income against the importance of being present for Lily. It was during one of these extra shifts, a Saturday afternoon at a free clinic in Dorchester, where Michael volunteered twice a month, that Elizabeth Armstrong reappeared in their lives. The clinic was bustling, filled with patients who couldn't afford regular medical care. Michael had just finished treating an elderly woman with hypertension when Dr. Patterson, the clinic director, approached him. "Hayes, there's someone asking for you, specifically in exam room 3. Says she knows you from Boston Memorial." Michael frowned. It wasn't uncommon for former patients to seek him out at the clinic, but it was unusual for them to know his volunteer schedule. "Did they give a name?" Dr. Patterson shook his head. "Just said she needed to speak with you about a medical program that might interest you. I told her you're busy, but she was quite insistent." Michael's frown deepened. A pharmaceutical rep, perhaps trying to pitch some new medication? He had no time for sales pitches. "I'll handle it," he said, heading toward exam room 3, with the intention of sending whoever it was on their way as quickly as possible. He opened the door, prepared for a confrontation, only to find Elizabeth Armstrong sitting on the exam table. She wore casual clothing, designer jeans, and a simple blouse, but there was no disguising her natural elegance or the authority she projected, even in this humble setting. "Miss Armstrong?" Michael didn't bother hiding his surprise. "This is unexpected." Elizabeth stood, seemingly uncertain for a moment before recovering her composure. "Mr. Hayes, thank you for seeing me. I apologize for the intrusion, but I didn't have another way to contact you." Michael remained in the doorway, maintaining his professional distance. "How's your arm?" "Healing well." She touched the spot absently. "The doctors at Mass General were impressed with the initial care I received." Michael nodded, waiting for her to explain her presence. When she didn't immediately continue, he prompted, "Dr. Patterson mentioned something about a medical program." "Yes," Elizabeth seemed to gather herself, her business persona sliding into place. "Armstrong Biomedical has recently received FDA approval for a clinical trial of our new kidney therapy, specifically for pediatric transplant recipients." Michael's guard immediately went up. "And you're here to recruit my daughter?" Elizabeth had the grace to look uncomfortable. "I'm here to offer an opportunity. Our therapy has shown remarkable promise in reducing the need for traditional anti-rejection medications with fewer side effects." "How did you find me?" Michael's voice was cool. "My volunteer schedule isn't public information." "I asked at Boston Memorial." At least she was direct. "I explained that I wanted to thank you properly for your assistance after my accident." "Well, consider me thanked." Michael stepped back, preparing to close the door. "Now, if you'll excuse me, there are patients waiting who actually need medical attention." "Mr. Hayes, Michael." Elizabeth's use of his first name stopped him. "I'm not here as a CEO looking for test subjects. I'm here because I saw Lily's medical files." "You did what?" Michael's voice was deadly quiet. "Not illegally," Elizabeth clarified quickly. "I have access to anonymized patient data for research purposes. But when I saw a pediatric transplant case matching Lily's age and circumstances at Boston Memorial, I connected the dots. Her medication regimen is taking a toll on her body, isn't it? The nausea she mentioned, the fatigue." Michael's jaw tightened. "That's private medical information. And I'm offering a solution. Our therapy targets the specific immune responses that lead to rejection without the systemic suppression current medications require." Elizabeth took a step toward him, her expression earnest. It could transform her quality of life. And as part of the trial, all costs would be covered. Medications, checkups, any related treatments. The financial relief such an arrangement would provide was immediately apparent to Michael. No more choosing between paying the rent or filling Lily's prescriptions. No more extra shifts that kept him away from her when she needed him most. But nothing came without strings, especially from someone like Elizabeth Armstrong. Why Lily specifically? There must be hundreds of eligible patients. Elizabeth hesitated, then answered with unexpected honesty. Because I've met her, I've seen her intelligence, her resilience. And because I believe you'll ensure she follows the protocol exactly, which is crucial for accurate results. So she is just a test subject to you. No, Elizabeth's response was immediate and forceful. She's a child who deserves a better quality of life than current treatments can provide. My sister didn't get that chance. Lily can. The mention of her sister gave Michael pause. There had been genuine emotion in Elizabeth's voice when she spoke of her. Perhaps her interest wasn't purely clinical or corporate after all. I'd need to review all the research, the potential side effects, the full protocol. Of course, Elizabeth reached into her bag and removed a thick folder. Everything's here, complete transparency, and I'm available to answer any questions you or Lily might have. Michael accepted the folder but didn't open it. I'll consider it. That's all I can promise right now. Elizabeth nodded, apparently understanding that this was as much as she could hope for in the moment. That's fair. She reached into her bag again and produced a business card. My direct number, not my office line. If you decide to proceed or if you just have questions, call any time. Michael took the card, tucking it into his pocket along with the folder. I should get back to my patients. Of course. Elizabeth moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. Regardless of your decision about the trial, I've authorized our foundation to establish a scholarship fund for pediatric transplant recipients. Educational expenses, summer camps, enrichment programs, things insurance doesn't cover, but that children like Lily deserve. Michael stiffened. We don't need charity, Ms. Armstrong. Elizabeth met his gaze directly. It's not charity, Mr. Hayes. It's investment in potential. Lily has remarkable gifts. They shouldn't be limited by financial circumstances. Before Michael could respond, Dr. Patterson appeared in the hallway. Hayes, we've got 3 patients waiting. On my way, Michael turned back to Elizabeth. I'll review the information and let you know my decision. Elizabeth nodded. Thank you for hearing me out. She moved past him into the hallway, her bearing regal, even in these humble surroundings. As Michael watched her leave, he felt a complex mixture of emotions. Suspicion, certainly. Irritation at her presumption. But also, reluctantly, a spark of hope. If Armstrong Biomedical's therapy was as promising as she claimed, it could change everything for Lily. The rest of his shift passed in a blur of patients and treatments, but his mind kept returning to the folder now sitting in his locker and the woman who had delivered it. Elizabeth Armstrong was used to getting what she wanted. That much was evident from everything he'd read about her in their brief interactions. The question was, what did she really want with Lily that evening after Lily had gone to bed? Michael sat at the kitchen table and opened the folder Elizabeth had given him. The clinical trial documentation was extensive and detailed, outlining a revolutionary approach to preventing transplant rejection by targeting specific immune pathways rather than suppressing the entire system. The potential benefits were significant: reduced side effects, lower infection risk, possibly even a pathway to eventually eliminating anti-rejection medications entirely. The risks were clearly stated as well: unproven long-term efficacy possible, unknown side effects, the uncertainty inherent in any new medical therapy. Michael read until his eyes burned, absorbing every detail, every footnote, every caveat. As a medical professional, he understood the science better than most parents would. The approach was sound, innovative even. If it worked as described, it could indeed transform Lily's life. But there was still the question of Elizabeth Armstrong's personal interest. The folder included information about Armstrong Biomedical's kidney therapy program, including its history and leadership team. Michael scanned the pages until he found what he was looking for: the program's origin story. Initiated in 2015 by CEO Elizabeth Armstrong in memory of her sister Catherine, who died of complications from kidney disease at age 9. There it was, Not just a passing reference, but the driving force behind the entire program. Elizabeth hadn't been exaggerating when she said it was personal to her. Michael sat back conflicted. If Elizabeth's motives were genuinely rooted in her sister's memory in preventing other children from suffering as Catherine had, that was understandable. Noble, even. But if Lily was simply a convenient test subject, a means to advance Armstrong Biomedical's market position, he reached for his phone, Elizabeth's business card in his other hand. It was nearly midnight, far too late for a professional call. He would wait until morning approached this decision with the clear head that came after a good night's sleep. The phone rang, startling him from his thoughts. The hospital's number appeared on the screen, sending a spike of adrenaline through his system. Late-night calls from the hospital were never good news. Hayes. Michael, it's Marjorie. I'm sorry to call so late, but I thought you should know. Elizabeth Armstrong was just admitted with complications from her accident. What kind of complications? Michael was already standing, instinctively moving toward Lily's bedroom to check on her. Infection at the wound site pretty severe. They're starting her on IV antibiotics, but Dr. Winters asked me to let you know since you were the first responder at the scene. That's unusual. Dr. Winters didn't typically update staff about former patients. Marjorie's voice lowered. Between us, I think she specifically asked for you. Mentioned something about an ongoing conversation that was important to a patient of yours. Lily, Elizabeth must have been on her way to follow up about the clinical trial when the infection symptoms became severe enough to send her to the hospital. Thanks for letting me know, Marjorie. I'm not scheduled until tomorrow night, but... He hesitated, then made a decision. Tell Dr. Winters I'll be in tomorrow morning to check on her. After ending the call, Michael stood in Lily's doorway, watching his daughter sleep peacefully. The moonlight filtering through her curtains cast a silver glow over her small form, making her appear even more vulnerable than usual. The timing of Elizabeth's readmission and Marjorie's call seemed too convenient to be coincidence. Was this a manipulation tactic? A way to pressure him into the clinical trial by appealing to his caregiver instincts? Or was it simply unfortunate timing, a genuine medical complication, and a concerned doctor making a routine professional courtesy call? Michael closed Lily's door softly and returned to the kitchen, gathering the clinical trial documents back into their folder. He would go to the hospital in the morning, speak with Elizabeth directly. Whatever game she might be playing, if indeed she was playing one, he needed clarity. Lily's well-being depended on it. As he prepared for bed, Michael found his thoughts returning to that moment on the rain-soaked road, Elizabeth trapped in her crashed Porsche, vulnerable and human. Easy. It hurts. The pain in her voice had been real, her gratitude for his help genuine. Perhaps, he conceded reluctantly, he was being too cynical, too quick to assign ulterior motives to a woman who had suffered her own losses and was trying in her way to prevent others from experiencing similar pain. Or perhaps Elizabeth Armstrong was exactly what her reputation suggested, a brilliant businesswoman who knew exactly how to leverage human connections for corporate gain. Either way, Michael would find out tomorrow. He would look her in the eye and ask directly what she really wanted from Lily and from him. Because one thing was certain when it came to his daughter's welfare, Michael Hayes would not be swayed by wealth, power, or even his own growing curiosity about the enigmatic CEO who had crashed so unexpectedly into their lives. Boston Memorial Hospital felt different in the daylight. The emergency department's frenetic energy had been replaced by the measured pace of morning rounds and scheduled procedures. Michael strode through the familiar corridors, his civilian clothes marking him as a visitor rather than staff. The folder containing Armstrong Biomedical's clinical trial information was tucked under his arm, its weight symbolic of the decision he faced. At the reception desk, the morning clerk glanced up with recognition. Michael didn't expect to see you until tonight. Just visiting a patient. Michael kept his tone casual, professional. Elizabeth Armstrong came in last night with an infection. The clerk's eyebrows rose slightly. Room 415. Dr. Chen is attending. Michael took the elevator to the fourth floor, using the time to organize his thoughts. He would be direct but cordial. He would ask about her condition, then transition to questions about the trial. No accusations about manipulation tactics or ulterior motives, just straightforward questions requiring straightforward answers. Elizabeth's private room was at the end of the hall with a view of the Boston skyline through large windows. When Michael entered, she was sitting up in bed, her laptop open despite the IV line running into her arm. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her normally perfect appearance had given way to the disheveled reality of hospital stays. She looked up surprised, briefly crossing her features before a smile appeared. "Mr. Hayes, I didn't expect to see you today." "Marjorie called me last night." Michael remained near the doorway, maintaining his distance, both physically and emotionally. "How's the infection?" Elizabeth closed her laptop, wincing slightly as the movement pulled at her arm. "Responding to antibiotics. Apparently some debris from the accident remained embedded deeper than initially thought. It festered." Michael nodded, his clinical eye assessing her condition. "Common complication with traumatic injuries. The body walls off foreign material, creating a perfect environment for bacteria." "You make it sound almost poetic." Elizabeth's attempt at humor fell flat in the sterile hospital room. "Thank you for coming, though I suspect it wasn't purely out of concern for my health. I reviewed the clinical trial information." Michael lifted the folder slightly. "I have questions." "Of course." Elizabeth gestured toward the chair beside her bed. "I'm not going anywhere, obviously." Michael hesitated, then took the seat, placing the folder on his lap. "The science looks promising, but I need to understand why you're personally involved in recruiting Lily." Elizabeth's professional mask slipped momentarily, revealing something more vulnerable. "I told you about my sister Catherine. She died when I was 14. Our parents had divorced 2 years earlier, and I was essentially her caretaker during her illness." The admission reframed Michael's understanding of Elizabeth's interest. Not merely a CEO pursuing a corporate agenda, but a woman shaped by childhood trauma. "I'm sorry, that must have been difficult. It taught me responsibility at an early age." Elizabeth's tone was matter-of-fact, but her fingers picked at the hospital blanket, betraying her discomfort with personal revelations. "Catherine's doctors tried everything available at the time. I promised her I'd find better treatment someday. Hence Armstrong Biomedical. Hence Armstrong Biomedical." Elizabeth's gaze met his unwavering. "I founded the company with my inheritance. Our first product was an improved dialysis system. The kidney therapy program came later after we'd established ourselves." Michael processed this information, reconciling it with his preconceptions about Elizabeth. "And Lily's participation is important to you because our therapy is ready, but the FDA requires clinical data on pediatric patients before full approval. And because," Elizabeth hesitated, uncharacteristically uncertain, "because when I met Lily, I saw a child who deserves better than current treatment options. The same way Catherine deserved better." Michael studied Elizabeth's face, searching for signs of manipulation or insincerity. He found none, only the intensity of someone driven by deeply personal motivations. The financial assistance included with participation that seems unusually generous. "It's standard for our clinical trials." Elizabeth's business persona reasserted itself. "We believe removing financial barriers increases compliance with treatment protocols, which improves data quality." "And the scholarship fund you mentioned." A hint of defensiveness entered Elizabeth's tone. "That's separate from the trial. It's something our foundation does regularly, supporting children with chronic conditions. Lily would qualify whether she participates or not." "It feels like a lot of attention for one child." "Is that what's bothering you, Mr. Hayes, that I've taken a personal interest?" Elizabeth's directness was challenging, her gaze unwavering. "Or is it that you're uncomfortable accepting help even when it benefits your daughter?" The question struck too close to home. Michael's jaw tightened. "I've spent 8 years making sure Lily has everything she needs." "And you've done an admirable job, but even the most dedicated parent can't change the realities of our healthcare system." Elizabeth's voice softened. "Accepting help doesn't diminish what you've accomplished." Michael stood abruptly, needing physical distance from the uncomfortable truth in Elizabeth's words. He moved to the window, looking out at the city below. "How would the trial work logistically?" "Hospital visits, medication schedules." Elizabeth allowed the subject change. "Initial evaluation and baseline tests at our research facility, then bi-weekly check-ins for the first month, monthly thereafter. Medication administered once daily at home. And if the therapy doesn't work for Lily, if there are complications, full medical support, immediate intervention, and return to her previous medication regimen if necessary." Elizabeth's response was immediate, clearly anticipated. "Lily's safety is the priority. I wouldn't suggest this if I didn't believe it was her best option. Michael turned back to face Elizabeth, his decision crystallizing. I need to discuss this with Lily. She's old enough to have input on her treatment. Of course. Elizabeth seemed to relax slightly, recognizing that Michael was seriously considering participation. She's remarkably mature for her age. Chronic illness does that to a child. The statement came out more bitterly than Michael intended. Elizabeth nodded, acknowledging the reality without platitudes. When you've made your decision, whatever it is, you can reach me at that direct number I gave you. And Michael, she rarely used his first name, the informality deliberate. There's no pressure, no deadline, take the time you need. The use of his first name, the apparent sincerity, Michael found himself wanting to believe in Elizabeth's good intentions. But years of struggling against a system that prioritized profit over people had made him wary. I'll let you know. As he turned to leave, Elizabeth spoke again. There's one more thing you should know. If Lily participates in the trial, I'll be personally overseeing her case. Michael paused at the doorway. Is that standard protocol? No. Elizabeth met his gaze directly, but I've made it a condition of the trial moving forward. I want to ensure everything is done correctly. The admission hung between them, laden with implications neither was ready to address. Michael nodded once, then left without further comment, the folder still clutched under his arm. Outside the hospital, Michael sat in his car processing the conversation. Elizabeth Armstrong was not what he had expected. Her personal connection to the kidney research program added a dimension to her interest in Lily that went beyond corporate objectives. The question remained, was that personal interest appropriate, or was it clouding her professional judgment? And what about his own judgment? Was his instinctive distrust of Elizabeth's wealth and power preventing him from seeing an opportunity that could transform Lily's life? His phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. Lily ran low-grade fever this morning. Called school nurse. She's monitoring. Michael's heart clenched. Low-grade fevers were a warning sign for transplant recipients, potentially indicating the beginning of rejection or infection. He started the car, pushing thoughts of Elizabeth Armstrong aside. Lily needed him now. Everything else would have to wait. The elementary school nurse's office was familiar territory. Lily sat on the vinyl-covered cot, her backpack beside her, looking pale but composed. The nurse, Mrs. Galloway, had been monitoring transplant students for 20 years. She knew when to call parents and when to call them ambulances. 100.2, Mrs. Galloway reported as Michael entered. No other symptoms, blood pressure, normal. She's been drinking water. Lily looked up, her expression a mixture of relief and embarrassment. I told her it's probably nothing, Dad. I feel fine. Michael knelt beside the cot, placing his hand on Lily's forehead, a father's gesture that no digital thermometer could replace. Any nausea, dizziness? None. Lily's frustration at the disruption to her day was evident. Can I just go back to class? We should check your levels first. Michael kept his tone matter-of-fact, avoiding the anxiety that always accompanied these moments. Better safe than sorry, Mrs. Galloway handed Michael Lily's emergency testing kit, a glucose meter adapted for checking creatinine levels, an imperfect but useful screening tool between proper blood tests. Michael performed the familiar procedure, pricking Lily's finger with practiced efficiency. The meter beeped, displaying numbers that made Michael's chest tighten. Elevated. Not emergency levels, but definitely up from last week. Hospital? Lily asked, her voice small despite her attempt at bravery. Let's go home first. We'll monitor and decide. Michael helped Lily gather her things, thanking Mrs. Galloway for her vigilance. In the car, Lily was quieter than usual, staring out the window at classmates enjoying recess, a normal childhood activity she was often excluded from due to her condition. Am I rejecting my kidney? The direct question caught Michael off guard. They had always been honest with each other about her condition, but Lily rarely verbalized her deepest fear. We don't know that, no. Creatinine can elevate for many reasons. That's why we monitor. But it could be rejection. It could be. Michael acknowledged, unable to lie to his scientifically minded daughter. Or it could be dehydration or a mild virus or even just stress. Lily considered this, her analytical mind processing the possibilities. You seem stressed today, Dad. Did something happen? Sometimes Lily's perceptiveness was unnerving. I visited someone at the hospital this morning, the woman from the car accident, Elizabeth Armstrong. The one who talked to me about kidney research. Lily perked up slightly, her health concerns momentarily overshadowed by curiosity. Is she okay? She developed an infection from her injury. She'll be fine. Michael decided this was as good a time as any to broach the subject. She gave me information about a clinical trial for a new kidney therapy, something that might help reduce the side effects of your anti-rejection medications. Lily's eyes widened. A clinical trial like experimental medicine. More like advanced testing of a therapy that's already shown promising results. Michael kept his eyes on the road, trying to present the information neutrally. It might mean fewer medications, fewer side effects, but it would also mean regular visits to a research facility, and there are always unknowns with new treatments. Would it cost a lot? I know my medications are expensive. The question revealed how much Lily absorbed of their financial struggles, despite Michael's efforts to shield her. Actually, all expenses would be covered as part of the trial, including your regular checkups. That sounds good then. Lily's matter-of-fact assessment reflected her practical nature. What's the problem? What makes you think there's a problem? Lily gave him the look she reserved for when adults were being obtuse. You're doing your worried but trying not to show it face. And you would have told me about this right away if you thought it was a good idea. Michael couldn't help but smile despite his concerns. You're too observant for your own good, you know that. Mom used to say that too. The casual reference to Jennifer was typical of Lily keeping her mother's memory alive through everyday conversation. They arrived home and Michael helped Lily settle on the couch with her tablet and a large glass of water. He took her temperature again, still elevated but stable, and texted her nephrologist the creatinine readings. So what is the problem with the trial? Lily persisted, not letting the subject drop. Michael sat beside her, organizing his thoughts. Clinical trials are complicated. They're designed to test new treatments, which means there are uncertainties, risks. Like my kidney could reject faster, or I could get sicker. Those are possibilities we'd have to consider. Michael was always honest with Lily about medical realities, believing knowledge was less frightening than the unknown. But there's also the possibility that this new therapy could work better than your current medications with fewer side effects, like not feeling sick every morning after I take them. Lily's voice held a wistfulness that tore at Michael's heart. Exactly like that. Lily was quiet for a moment, her brow furrowed in thought. Is Elizabeth Armstrong in charge of the trial? Yes, she founded the company developing the therapy. Michael hesitated, then added, her sister died from kidney disease when she was young. That's why she's interested in this research. This piece of information clearly impacted Lily. She lost her sister. That's really sad. It is. Michael watched his daughter process this revelation, seeing her empathy develop in real time. Is that why she talked to me at the hospital? Because I reminded her of her sister. The question cut to the heart of Michael's concerns about Elizabeth's interest in Lily. That might be part of it, but she's also a scientist and a businesswoman. The trial needs participants like you to prove the therapy works. So I'd be helping other kids too. This aspect clearly appealed to Lily's altruistic nature. By testing medicine that might work better for everyone. Potentially, yes. Lily nodded, decision made with the straightforward clarity of childhood. I want to do it. Lily, it's not that simple. Why not? Lily's expression was earnest, determined. You always say we should help others when we can, and it might help me too. Before Michael could respond, his phone rang. Lily's nephrologist, returning his message about her creatinine levels. The conversation was brief and clinical. No immediate action required, but they should come in tomorrow for comprehensive blood work. Monitoring protocols to be followed. The familiar medical dance that had choreographed their lives for years. After ending the call, Michael found Lily watching him expectantly. What did Dr. Abernathy say? We need to go in tomorrow for proper tests. Michael kept his tone calm. He's not overly concerned, but wants to be thorough. See, this is why the clinical trial would be good. Lily's logic was disarmingly simple. If it works, maybe we wouldn't have to worry about rejection so much. Michael sat beside her again, choosing his words carefully. Lily, I need you to understand something. Even the best medical trials have risks. And just because Elizabeth Armstrong is personally interested in your case doesn't mean this is automatically the right decision for you. But you said her sister died from kidney disease. She must really want to help people like me. I believe she does. Michael was surprised to realize he meant it. But wanting to help doesn't always translate to being able to help. Medical research is complicated. Lily considered this her expression thoughtful beyond her years. Can we at least talk to her about it? Like all the details? It was a reasonable request, and Michael couldn't deny Lily the opportunity to understand a treatment that might significantly impact her life. If tomorrow's tests look okay, we can arrange a meeting, but no decisions until we have all the information agreed. Lily nodded solemnly. Agreed. Scientific method. Gather data before forming a conclusion. Michael smiled at his daughter's application of her school lessons to real life. Exactly. The next day's tests at the nephrology clinic were comprehensive and exhausting. Blood draws, urinalysis, ultrasound of the transplanted kidney, a full workup designed to detect the slightest indication of rejection or infection. Lily endured it all with the stoicism of a child accustomed to medical procedures, her only complaints coming when hunger set in after hours of waiting. Michael sat beside her throughout, alternating between providing encouragement and distracting her with science videos on his phone. Between procedures, he found himself checking his own phone repeatedly, half expecting to see a message from Elizabeth despite not having contacted her about their potential interest in the trial. Late afternoon brought Dr. Abernathy to the consultation room, his expression neutral as he reviewed the test results. Creatinine is elevated but not critically, no protein in the urine. Ultrasound shows good blood flow to the kidney. So not rejection, Michael asked, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. Not acute rejection, no. Dr. Abernathy's careful phrasing raised immediate red flags. But I am seeing early indicators of chronic rejection. It's subtle but present. The room seemed to grow colder. Chronic rejection was the specter that haunted all transplant recipients, the body's slow, persistent attempt to reject the foreign organ despite medication. Unlike acute rejection, it couldn't be reversed, only slowed. What does that mean? Lily's voice was small but steady. Will I need another transplant? Dr. Abernathy addressed her directly, respecting her understanding of her condition. Not immediately, no. Chronic rejection typically progresses slowly. With careful management, your kidney could function well for many more years. But eventually, Lily pressed, refusing the comforting vagueness adults often offer children. Eventually, yes, another transplant might be necessary. But medical advances happen constantly. By that time, we might have better options. Michael's mind immediately went to the clinical trial information in his bag. What about newer anti-rejection therapies, ones that target specific immune responses rather than general immunosuppression? Dr. Abernathy raised an eyebrow. You're referring to the targeted immunomodulation approaches. They're promising, but mostly experimental still. Armstrong Biomedical has one in clinical trials now. Michael hesitated, then continued. They've approached us about Lily participating. Armstrong, Dr. Abernathy's interest was clearly piqued. Their research is cutting edge. Elizabeth Armstrong has assembled some of the best minds in transplant medicine. You know of her work? Michael was surprised by the immediate recognition. Everyone in nephrology knows Armstrong Biomedical. Their dialysis systems revolutionize treatment protocols. If they've invited Lily to participate in a clinical trial, it's worth serious consideration. Dr. Abernathy turned to his computer, typing rapidly. Let me pull up the latest research. While the doctor researched, Lily tugged on Michael's sleeve. See, Dr. Abernathy thinks it might be good too. Michael squeezed her hand, his thoughts racing. The revelation of early chronic rejection changed the equation significantly. The risk calculation shifted when the alternative wasn't stable health, but slow, inevitable decline. Dr. Abernathy turned back from his computer. The preliminary results look very promising. Phase 1 trials showed significant reduction in rejection markers with minimal side effects. Phase 2 is expanding to pediatric patients. He looked at Lily, then Michael. I'd want to review the specific protocol before giving my professional recommendation, but based on what I'm seeing, this could be an excellent opportunity for Lily. They've offered to cover all costs associated with participation. Michael felt it important to disclose this aspect. Medical expenses travel everything. Standard for high-profile trials like this. Now, Abernathy seemed unfazed. Armstrong has the resources to ensure proper participation, and it's in their interest to remove barriers. Elizabeth Armstrong has taken a personal interest in Lily's case. Michael watched Dr. Abernathy carefully for his reaction. She says she'll be overseeing Lily's participation directly. This information did raise the doctor's eyebrows. That's unusual. Elizabeth Armstrong is the CEO, not a research physician. Her sister died from kidney disease when she was young. Lily offered this information with the straightforward empathy of childhood. Dad says that's why she started her company. Said Abernathy nodded slowly. I'd heard something to that effect. It would explain her dedication to the field. He turned to Michael. Personal interest from the CEO could mean extra attention to detail, which isn't a bad thing. But I'd still recommend having their protocol reviewed by an independent specialist. I'd plan to, Michael assured him. Good. Dr. Abernathy closed Lily's file. In light of these early rejection indicators, I'm adjusting Lily's medication dosage slightly, and I want to see her again in 2 weeks rather than our usual month. The increased monitoring and medication adjustments underscored the seriousness of the situation. As they left the clinic, Michael felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. The clinical trial had seemed like an interesting possibility before. Now it felt like a potential lifeline. In the car, Lily was unusually quiet, staring out the window at the passing cityscape. Am I going to lose my kidney, Dad? The direct question deserved a direct answer. Not right away. Dr. Abernathy is making adjustments to help it last as long as possible. But someday, it wasn't a question. Transplanted organs don't last forever, Lily. We've always known that. Michael kept his voice gentle but honest. But medical science keeps improving. That's why the Armstrong trial might be worth considering. Lily nodded, absorbing this reality with remarkable composure. Can we call Elizabeth today to learn more about it? Michael hesitated, then made a decision. Let's get home first, then we'll call. At their apartment, Michael prepared a simple dinner while Lily rested. The emotional and physical toll of the day's medical procedures had finally caught up with her, and she dozed on the couch while Michael moved around the kitchen, his mind racing with questions, concerns, and possibilities. The revelation of early chronic rejection had shifted his perspective on the clinical trial. What had seemed like an unwanted complication in their lives now represented a potential path forward, a chance to extend the life of Lily's transplanted kidney and improve her quality of life in the process. But questions remained. Why had Elizabeth Armstrong taken such a personal interest in Lily specifically? Was it truly because she saw echoes of her sister in his daughter, or was there something else? Something Michael was missing in his focus on Lily's medical needs. After dinner with Lily more alert and her medication taken, Michael finally retrieved Elizabeth's business card from his wallet. Are you sure you want to do this? Lily nodded, her expression determined. I want to know more about the medicine that might help me. Michael dialed the number, half expecting to reach an assistant or voicemail, despite Elizabeth's assurance it was her direct line. Instead, she answered on the second ring. Elizabeth Armstrong. Ms. Armstrong, it's Michael Hayes, Lily's father. Michael kept his tone professional neutral. We'd like to discuss the clinical trial further. There was a brief pause, then Elizabeth's voice warmed slightly. Mr. Hayes, I'm pleased to hear from you. How is Lily? She's here with me, and she's had some concerning test results today that make your trial more relevant to our situation. I'm sorry to hear that. Elizabeth's concern sounded genuine. What did her doctors find? Early signs of chronic rejection. Michael didn't elaborate, knowing Elizabeth would understand the implications. I see. Her tone shifted, becoming more clinical. Our therapy has shown promising results in addressing the immune mechanisms that drive chronic rejection. It might be particularly beneficial in Lily's case. That's what we wanted to discuss, in person if possible. Of course, Elizabeth didn't hesitate. I've been discharged from the hospital. I could meet with you both tomorrow at our research facility. It would give you a chance to see the labs and meet some of the research team. Tomorrow works. Michael glanced at Lily, who was listening intently. What time? They agreed on an afternoon appointment, giving Lily time to rest in the morning. After ending the call, Michael found his daughter watching him with a mixture of hope and apprehension. Are we really going to do this, Dad? We're going to learn more, Michael clarified. No decisions yet. But you're thinking about it differently now, aren't you, because of what Dr. Abernathy said? Michael nodded, impressed again by Lily's perceptiveness. The risks and benefits look different when we know your kidney is already showing signs of trouble. Is Elizabeth nice when she's not in the hospital, I mean? The question was typical Lily, focusing on the human element rather than the clinical aspects. She seems focused, dedicated to her work. Because of her sister, that appears to be a significant motivation, yes. Michael began clearing the dinner dishes, needing physical activity to process his thoughts. But she's also running a company worth billions of dollars. That comes with other priorities. Like making money, Michael agreed, but also like proving her research works, creating treatments that help people. I think those can be the same thing sometimes. Lily's simple observation contained wisdom many adults failed to grasp. Making money by helping people. In an ideal world, yes. Michael had seen too much of the healthcare system's dysfunction to fully embrace this optimistic view. But sometimes the profit motive overshadows the helping motive. Do you think that's true for Elizabeth? Michael considered the question carefully. I think she genuinely wants to help children with kidney disease. I also think she wants her company to succeed. Those motivations aren't necessarily contradictory, but they might sometimes pull in different directions. Lily absorbed this, then asked the question that had clearly been bothering her most. Dad, if her medicine works, would I still need another transplant someday? The hope in her voice was painful to hear. Lily, even the best treatments can't make a transplanted organ last forever. But if it works as they believe it will, it could extend your kidney's function significantly and reduce the side effects you deal with every day. That would be worth it then. Lily's certainty was both heartening and concerning, even if it doesn't work forever. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Tomorrow is just about gathering information. Michael tried to temper her expectations. Clinical trials are complex, and not everyone responds the same way to new treatments. I know. Lily's expression was solemn. But it's hope, right? A new kind of hope. Michael couldn't deny the truth in her words. After years of managing Lily's condition with existing treatments, always aware of their limitations and side effects, the possibility of something better represented a hope he hadn't allowed himself to nurture. Yes, he admitted finally, it's hope, and that's valuable all by itself. Armstrong Biomedical occupied a sleek glass building overlooking the Charles River, its architecture a statement of innovation and prosperity. Michael parked in the visitor's garage, helping Lily from the car and taking a moment to adjust her jacket. She had insisted on wearing her science outfit, a dress with atoms printed on the fabric, and her favorite lab-themed sneakers. Ready? Michael squeezed her hand, offering reassurance. Ready. Lily's excitement was palpable, her earlier fatigue temporarily forgotten in the anticipation of seeing a real research facility. The lobby was a study in understated luxury, polished stone floors, living walls of green plants, and a reception desk that appeared to be carved from a single piece of marble. The receptionist, impeccably professional, was clearly expecting them. Mr. Hayes and Lily, Ms. Armstrong is waiting for you. Thomas will escort you to the research floor. Thomas, a young man in business casual attire, materialized beside them with a welcoming smile. Right this way. Ms. Armstrong is particularly excited about your visit. She rarely gives personal tours of the facility. As they followed Thomas into an elevator with glass walls that offered views of Boston's skyline, Michael wondered again about Elizabeth's unusual personal involvement. Was it truly about her sister's memory, or was Lily's case somehow uniquely valuable to their research? The elevator opened directly onto a floor that looked like a cross between a hospital and a futuristic laboratory. Glass-walled rooms contained equipment Michael recognized from his medical training, alongside technology he couldn't identify. Researchers in white coats moved purposefully between stations, their work displayed on large monitors throughout the space. Elizabeth Armstrong stood near a central workstation, engaged in conversation with an older man whose lab coat bore the name Dr. Maxwell Thornton on the breast pocket. She looked remarkably recovered from her hospital stay, dressed in a tailored navy suit, her hair arranged in a sleek twist, the only evidence of her recent ordeal being a slight paleness to her complexion and the bandage still visible on her arm. She spotted them immediately, excusing herself from the conversation and approaching with a warm smile that seemed reserved entirely for Lily. Welcome to Armstrong Biomedical. I'm so glad you could come. Lily's eyes were wide, taking in the laboratory surroundings with undisguised fascination. Your building is amazing. Do you actually make medicine here? We develop and test it here, Elizabeth corrected gently. The actual manufacturing happens at specialized facilities. But the research, the discovery that happens right where you're standing. She extended her hand to Michael, her manner more formal than it had been in the hospital. Thank you for bringing Lily. I know yesterday's news must have been difficult for both of you. Michael shook her hand, noting the firm, confident grip. We're here to learn. No decisions yet. Of course, Elizabeth gestured toward the man she'd been speaking with. This is Dr. Thornton, our chief medical officer and the primary researcher on the kidney therapy program. He'll be explaining the science behind our approach. Dr. Thornton stepped forward, his manner grandfatherly but sharp-eyed. Lily Hayes, I've heard quite a bit about you. Elizabeth tells me you have an excellent understanding of kidney function for someone your age. Lily straightened, clearly pleased to be addressed as an intellectual equal. I've read a lot about it, since it affects me directly. The best scientists are often those with personal connections to their research. Dr. Thornton glanced at Elizabeth, something unspoken passing between them. Would you like to see what we're working on? What followed was a tour carefully calibrated to engage Lily while providing Michael with the technical information he needed. Dr. Thornton led them through various sections of the research floor, explaining the principles behind their targeted immunomodulation therapy in terms Lily could understand without talking down to her. Elizabeth walked alongside Michael, occasionally adding context to Dr. Thornton's explanations. Traditional anti-rejection medications suppress the entire immune system, which is why Lily is vulnerable to infections. Our approach targets only the specific immune pathways involved in organ rejection. The concept makes sense, Michael acknowledged, but the devil's always in the details with immunology, which is why we've spent 8 years refining the therapy before beginning clinical trials. Elizabeth's passion for the work was evident in her voice. We've addressed the off-target effects that plagued earlier attempts. The preliminary results are extremely promising. They paused at a workstation displaying molecular models on large screens. Dr. Thornton had knelt to Lily's level, explaining a complex protein interaction with remarkable clarity. Lily was asking questions that revealed her understanding of the basic concepts, her enthusiasm infectious. She's remarkable, Elizabeth said quietly to Michael. Most adults wouldn't grasp the concepts as quickly as she does. She's had a lot of practice. Michael couldn't keep a note of pride from his voice. When you spend half your childhood in hospitals, you either learn the science or go crazy with boredom. Elizabeth's expression softened with understanding. Catherine was the same way. By the time she was 8, she could explain glomerular filtration rate better than some medical students. The personal comparison between Lily and her sister made Michael uncomfortable again. About your interest in Lily specifically. I understand your concern. Elizabeth turned to face him directly. You're worried I'm projecting my feelings about Catherine onto Lily, that my judgment might be compromised. The direct acknowledgement of his unspoken concern caught Michael off guard. The thought had occurred to me, yes. It's a fair question. Elizabeth's gaze was steady, unflinching. I won't deny that meeting Lily stirred memories, but my interest in her as a trial participant is primarily professional. Her medical history makes her an ideal candidate, and her intelligence means she'll understand the importance of protocol adherence. And the personal oversight you mentioned, that's standard for all participants. No. Elizabeth's honesty was disarming. That's because I recognize the unusual circumstances of our meeting, and because I want to ensure nothing goes wrong, for both your sakes. Before Michael could respond, Lily's excited voice called to him from across the lab. Dad, come see this. They can actually watch how the medicine affects individual cells. As Michael moved to join his daughter, Elizabeth remained where she was, watching them interact with an expression he couldn't quite decipher. Something between professional interest and personal longing, as if witnessing something both familiar and forever beyond her reach. The week following their visit to Armstrong Biomedical passed in a blur of research consultations and late-night discussions after Lily went to bed. Michael sought independent opinions from 3 specialists, had Armstrong's protocol reviewed by a medical ethicist, and spent hours reading everything available about targeted immunomodulation therapy. The decision before them was too important to rush, despite Lily's growing impatience. But Dad, we've talked to everyone. Lily's frustration bubbled over during breakfast. She pushed her cereal bowl away untouched. Dr. Abernathy thinks it's good. The specialists think it's good. Even you said the science makes sense. Michael recognized the nausea that often accompanied her morning medications, a side effect the Armstrong therapy promised to eliminate. Science making sense and proving safe for you specifically are different things. Elizabeth says I'm an ideal candidate. She wouldn't lie about that. Lily's trust in Elizabeth had grown steadily since their tour of the research facility, where the CEO had spent nearly an hour answering Lily's questions about kidney function and molecular biology. Elizabeth has personal and professional interests in this trial. Michael chose his words carefully, not wanting to undermine Lily's trust, but needing her to understand the complexities. That doesn't mean she's lying, but it could affect her judgment. You don't trust her. Lily's perception cut straight to the heart of the matter. Even after everything she's shown us, Michael sighed, setting down his coffee mug. I trust her intentions. I'm less certain about the execution. Clinical trials have inherent risks, Lily. That's why they're trials. But my kidney is already showing rejection. Dr. Abernathy said so. Lily's voice quieted vulnerability seeping through her frustration. What if waiting makes it worse? The question had haunted Michael for days. Lily's latest blood work showed subtle but consistent progression of the chronic rejection markers. The current treatment was losing effectiveness, yet the alternative remained experimental, untested in children beyond phase 1 safety trials. Michael reached across the table, covering Lily's small hand with his own. I promise we'll decide today. I just need to speak with Elizabeth one more time. About what contingency plans? What happens if the therapy doesn't work for you or has unexpected side effects? Michael squeezed her hand gently. I need to know there's a safety net. Lily nodded, her scientific mind grasping the concept. Like experimental controls. Exactly like that. The Armstrong biomedical lobby felt more familiar on their second visit. The receptionist recognized them, offering Lily a genuine smile as they approached the desk. Ms. Armstrong is waiting in the conference room, 5th floor. The elevator ride was silent, both Hayes lost in their own thoughts. For Michael, the weight of the impending decision pressed against his chest like a physical force. For all his research and consultations, the final choice remained agonizingly personal, a father's judgment call that could significantly impact his daughter's future. The conference room overlooked Boston Harbor, the morning sun glinting off the water and illuminating the space with natural light. Elizabeth stood at the window, her posture straight and commanding the picture of corporate success. Yet as she turned to greet them, Michael noticed the shadows under her eyes, partially concealed by makeup, but visible nonetheless. Michael, Lily, thank you for coming. Elizabeth's smile brightened as Lily approached, her enthusiasm bubbling over, despite the serious occasion. How are you feeling today? Okay, a little sick from my morning meds. Lily's honesty was disarming, her ability to discuss medical realities without self-pity, remarkable for her age. Dad says we're making our final decision today. Elizabeth's gaze shifted to Michael and her expression carefully neutral. I understand your need for caution. You've had additional questions. About contingencies. Michael remained standing, maintaining his position as Lily's protector, rather than taking a seat at the conference table. If Lily experiences adverse reactions or the therapy proves ineffective for her specifically, Elizabeth gestured toward the table where folders had been arranged at 3 places. I anticipated your concerns. Please, both of you sit. I've prepared comprehensive documentation of our emergency protocols and follow-up care provisions. They seated themselves around the polished table, Lily immediately opening her folder with the eagerness of a student receiving new material. Michael was more measured, scanning the contents with the critical eye of both medical professional and parent. The documents were impressively thorough, detailed response protocols for various potential complications, guaranteed continuation of care regardless of trial outcomes, and financial coverage extending 6 months beyond trial conclusion. Armstrong Biomedical had clearly spared no expense in creating safety nets for their participants. As you can see, we've anticipated virtually every contingency. Elizabeth's tone balanced professional confidence with personal reassurance. Lily's safety is the absolute priority. At the first sign of any adverse reaction, we have protocols to immediately intervene and return her to her current medication regimen if necessary. Michael flipped to a section outlining the monitoring schedule. Weekly blood work for the first month is intensive. essential for ensuring early detection of any issues. The blood work gradually decreases in frequency as we establish stability. Elizabeth leaned forward slightly. Michael, I understand your concerns. If I were in your position, I would have the same questions. But I truly believe this therapy represents Lily's best chance at long-term kidney function with improved quality of life. And if it doesn't work, the question that had kept Michael awake for nights finally emerged. If Lily's rejection progresses despite the therapy, Elizabeth didn't flinch from the direct challenge. Then we have failed, and I will personally ensure Lily receives the best conventional care available, including priority placement on the transplant list, should that become necessary. You can't guarantee transplant priority. Michael's skepticism was immediate. That's not how the system works. You're right, I can't officially guarantee it. Elizabeth's gaze was steady, unflinching. But Armstrong Biomedical has significant influence with several major transplant centers through our research partnerships. I would leverage every connection available to ensure Lily receives the care she needs. The admission was startling in its directness, a tacit acknowledgement of power dynamics Michael had suspected but never expected to hear stated so plainly. It represented both reassurance and concern. Elizabeth Armstrong was indeed willing to use her considerable influence for Lily's benefit, but such power existing outside normal medical protocols raised ethical questions. Dad, Lily's voice cut through Michael's thoughts. She had been quietly reviewing her own folder, absorbing the medical information with remarkable comprehension. The risks seem worth it. My kidney is already having problems. This might help it last longer. Her simple assessment, free from the adult complexities of medical politics and corporate interests, refocused the conversation on its essential purpose, Lily's health and future. Elizabeth seemed to sense the shift. Ultimately, this is a family decision. I've provided all the information I can. The rest is up to you. Michael closed his folder slowly, a decision crystallizing in his mind. If we proceed, I want two conditions beyond the standard protocols. Name them. Elizabeth's immediate response suggested she'd been expecting this. First, I want to be present for all treatments and evaluations, not just as Lily's father, but as a medical professional observing the procedures. Reasonable and already accommodated in our protocols. And the second, Michael met her gaze directly. Complete transparency, no filtering of results or selective reporting. I want to see the raw data from Lily's test, not just the interpreted findings. A slight tension appeared at the corners of Elizabeth's mouth, the first indication that his request might be pushing boundaries. That's unusual. Trial data is typically processed through our research team before we... Those are my conditions. Michael's tone was firm, unyielding on this point. Lily's participation depends on complete transparency. Elizabeth studied him for a long moment, something unreadable passing behind her eyes. Then she nodded once decisively. Agreed, you'll have access to the unprocessed data. Then we accept. The words felt momentous as they left Michael's mouth, a threshold crossed that would reshape their lives in ways yet unknown. Lily's face lit up, hope blooming across her features. Really, we're doing it. We're doing it. Michael reached for her hand, grounding himself in the connection with his daughter, the person for whom he would move mountains, challenge billion-dollar corporations, and take calculated risks if it meant a better life. Elizabeth's professional composure softened slightly, a genuine smile warming her features. Thank you for your trust. We'll begin the formal enrollment process immediately. The enrollment process was surprisingly straightforward. Paperwork, completed baselines, established initial tests conducted with methodical efficiency. Within 2 weeks, Lily received her first dose of the experimental therapy under the watchful eyes of both Michael and Elizabeth, who had kept her promise to personally oversee Lily's case. The treatment itself was anticlimactic, a simple injection that took seconds to administer. The true test would come in the following days and weeks as they monitored Lily's body for both positive responses and potential side effects. 3 days after the initial treatment, Michael woke to the sound of movement in the kitchen. He glanced at the clock, 6:15 a.m., unusually early for Lily to be up voluntarily. Concerned, he pulled on a t-shirt and padded down the hallway, expecting to find her hunched over the sink, fighting morning nausea from her medications. Instead, he found Lily at the stove, carefully monitoring a pan of scrambled eggs, while toast browned in the toaster. She turned at his approach, her face brighter and more animated than it had been in months. Morning, Dad, I made breakfast. I was hungry. Michael blinked, processing the scene before him. Hungry at 6 a.m. after your meds. I took them 20 minutes ago. Lily gestured toward her pill organizer on the counter, the morning compartment empty. And I didn't feel sick at all, not even a little bit. Michael approached cautiously, medical training, warring with parental hope. No nausea, no dizziness. None. Lily expertly slid the eggs onto 2 plates. I feel good, Dad, really good. Let's not get too excited yet. Michael tempered his response, ever cautious. It could be coincidence or even the placebo effect. We need more data points. I know. Lily rolled her eyes good-naturedly at his scientific caution. But it's a positive initial observation, right? Definitely positive. Michael couldn't suppress his smile as Lily confidently served breakfast, a simple act most families took for granted, but one that had been rare in the Hayes household due to Lily's medication side effects. The positive trend continued over the following days. Lily's energy improved, her appetite normalized, and the morning medication routine proceeded without the usual battle against nausea. Blood work showed stable kidney function with no signs of rejection, progression, not improvement yet, but a halting of the decline they had been tracking. By the 2-week mark, even Michael's cautious optimism had blossomed into genuine hope. During Lily's follow-up appointment at Armstrong Biomedical, Dr. Thornton reviewed her results with evident satisfaction. The therapy is performing exactly as we hoped. Kidney function stable, rejection markers unchanged, and significant reduction in side effects. The chief medical officer turned to Elizabeth, who had joined them midway through the examination. Ms. Armstrong, Lily's results are consistent with our best phase 1 outcomes. Elizabeth maintained professional composure, but Michael caught the flash of genuine pleasure in her eyes. Excellent, and the blood markers for the targeted pathways. Responding precisely as modeled. The specificity is impressive. Dr. Thornton handed Michael a tablet displaying Lily's results. As promised, the complete data set. I've highlighted the key indicators, but everything is there. Michael scrolled through the information, his medical training allowing him to interpret the complex results. Everything aligned with Dr. Thornton's assessment. The therapy appeared to be working exactly as intended, suppressing only the specific immune responses involved in organ rejection while leaving the rest of Lily's immune system intact. This is remarkable. Michael couldn't contain his professional admiration despite his personal caution. The targeting precision is unlike anything I've seen in immunosuppression therapy. 8 years of development. Elizabeth's pride was evident but controlled. We refused to move to human trials until we achieved this level of specificity. Lily, who had been quietly observing the adults discuss her results, finally spoke up. So it's working. I can keep taking it. Thornton smiled warmly at his young patient. It's working beautifully, Lily. We'll continue the treatment and monitoring schedule as planned. And I can keep feeling good in the mornings. The simple question revealed what mattered most to Lily, not the complex immunology or medical markers, but the practical impact on her daily life. That's certainly our expectation. Dr. Thornton's response was measured but optimistic. The reduction in side effects should be permanent as long as you're on this therapy. As they prepared to leave the appointment, Elizabeth pulled Michael aside while Lily chatted with a research assistant about the molecular models displayed in the lab. I'd like to discuss something with you privately. Elizabeth's tone was carefully neutral. Regarding the next phase of Lily's treatment. Michael tensed immediately. Is there a concern? Not at all, quite the opposite. Elizabeth glanced toward Lily, ensuring she was out of earshot. Her response has been so positive that Dr. Thornton and I believe she would be an ideal candidate for our advanced protocol. Advanced protocol that wasn't mentioned in the original documentation. It's a recently approved extension for exceptional responders. Elizabeth's explanation was smooth practiced. It involves a modified therapy schedule and additional monitoring, but potentially offers even better long-term outcomes. Michael's suspicion, temporarily dormant during Lily's positive results, flared again. Why wasn't this possibility included in the materials you provided initially? Because FDA approval for the extension only came through last week. Elizabeth met his skeptical gaze directly. Michael, I understand your caution, but this represents an opportunity for Lily to be at the absolute forefront of transplant medicine. I'd need to see the complete protocol, have it reviewed independently. Of course. Elizabeth nodded, unsurprised by his response. I'll have the full documentation sent to you today, along with the FDA approval letter. Take all the time you need to review it. As promised, the advanced protocol documentation arrived that afternoon. Michael spent the evening reviewing it while Lily completed homework at the kitchen table, a normal domestic scene that would have been unlikely just weeks earlier due to her medication fatigue. The protocol appeared legitimate and well-designed, focusing on optimizing dosage and timing rather than changing the fundamental approach. The potential benefits were significant possible reversal of early rejection markers rather than just stabilization. But something about the timing and Elizabeth's specific interest in enrolling Lily continued to nag at Michael's instincts. After Lily went to bed, Michael called Dr. Abernathy for an independent assessment. The nephrologist listened carefully to Michael's summary of the advanced protocol, then offered his professional opinion. It sounds medically sound. The approach is consistent with what we know about immunomodulation therapy optimization. Dr. Abernathy paused thoughtfully. That said, the timing is interesting. Moving a patient to an advanced protocol so quickly is unusual in clinical trials. They typically want more long-term data first. That was my thought as well. Michael paced his small living room phone pressed to his ear. Elizabeth says Lily is an exceptional responder, but 2 weeks seems premature for that designation. It does raise questions about their motivation. Abernathy's tone remained measured clinical. Though from a purely medical perspective, if Lily is responding well and the advanced protocol has FDA approval, there's limited downside to participation, beyond the unknown risks of any experimental treatment. Beyond that, yes, but those risks exist in the current protocol as well. Abernathy sighed, the sound capturing the complexity of the situation. Michael, as Lily's physician, I have to say the initial results are more positive than I expected. Her quality of life has improved significantly, and her kidney function has stabilized. Those are outcomes we couldn't achieve with conventional treatment. The assessment aligned with Michael's own observations, yet the unease persisted. After ending the call, he pulled out his laptop and began researching Armstrong Biomedical more deeply beyond the clinical aspects of their kidney therapy program and into their corporate structure and financial position. What he found added another layer to his concerns. Armstrong Biomedical was preparing for an initial public offering, their first public stock offering, after years as a privately held company. The timing aligned perfectly with their kidney therapy entering phase 2 trials, suggesting the company was positioning for maximum valuation based on promising early results. Michael sat back processing this information. Elizabeth's push for Lily to enter the advanced protocol took on new context. A high-profile success case, particularly a child with dramatic quality of life improvements, would be invaluable for investor relations during the IPO process. This didn't necessarily mean the advanced protocol wasn't medically sound or potentially beneficial for Lily, but it did suggest additional motivations behind Elizabeth's personal interest that went beyond her sister's memory or pure scientific advancement. The next morning, Michael called Elizabeth directly rather than going through her assistant. She answered promptly, her voice shifting from professional to personal when she recognized his number. Michael, have you reviewed the advanced protocol? I have, and I've done some additional research. Michael kept his tone neutral factual. Armstrong Biomedical is preparing for an IPO. A brief silence followed, then Elizabeth responded with characteristic directness. Yes, though that information isn't public yet. It explains your interest in moving Lily to the advanced protocol so quickly. A successful pediatric case would be valuable during your investor roadshow. That's an unfair characterization. The first hints of defensiveness entered Elizabeth's voice. My interest in Lily's case is primarily medical. The corporate timing is coincidental. Is it? The timing seems remarkably convenient. Elizabeth sighed, a rare display of personal frustration breaking through her professional veneer. Michael, I understand how this appears. Yes, Armstrong is preparing to go public. Yes, successful cases like Lily's are valuable for demonstrating our technology's effectiveness. But that doesn't change the medical reality that the advanced protocol represents her best chance at long-term kidney health. You should have disclosed the IPO plans when we discussed participation. Michael's disappointment was evident. It represents a clear conflict of interest in your decision-making. Perhaps. Elizabeth's candor was unexpected. But would it have changed the fundamental equation for Lily? The therapy is working. Her quality of life has improved dramatically. The advanced protocol offers potential further benefits with minimal additional risk. Those facts exist independently of our corporate structure. The argument was logical, rational, and yet it didn't address the core issue of trust that had been compromised. I need time to consider this new information before making any decision about the advanced protocol. Of course, Elizabeth's tone softened. Michael, I hope this doesn't damage the trust we've been building. Whatever you might think of our corporate timing, my commitment to Lily's well-being is genuine. After ending the call, Michael sat at his kitchen table, uncertainty churning through him. The medical benefits of the Armstrong therapy were undeniable. Lily was flourishing in ways he hadn't dared hope for just weeks earlier. Yet the revelation about the IPO timing cast a shadow over Elizabeth's motives and judgment. The situation crystallized a fundamental question. Could corporate interests and patient welfare truly align, or were they inevitably in conflict? Elizabeth clearly believed they could coexist, perhaps even reinforce each other. Michael's experience in healthcare had taught him otherwise. His thoughts were interrupted by Lily emerging from her room backpack, slung over one shoulder as she prepared for school. "Morning, Dad. I finished my science project last night. Want to see?" The enthusiasm in her voice, the energy in her movements, these were the tangible results of the Armstrong therapy, corporate motivations notwithstanding. Michael forced a smile. "Definitely. Show me before you leave." Lily retrieved a detailed model of a kidney, complete with color-coded sections showing how her medications affected different regions. Her understanding of her own condition had always been impressive, but the clarity with which she explained the therapy's targeted approach revealed how closely she'd been following her treatment. "And see this part? That's where the Armstrong medicine works differently." Lily pointed to a specific section of the model. "It only blocks the bad immune responses, not all of them like my old medicines." "You've really researched this." "Elizabeth explained it to me during my last checkup." Lily's casual mention of the CEO revealed how comfortable she'd become with the woman in a short time. "She said I understand it better than some medical students." The comparison to Catherine, Elizabeth's lost sister, hung unspoken between them. Michael wondered again how much of Elizabeth's interest in Lily was rooted in that decades-old loss, and whether that made her involvement more concerning or more understandable. "Lily," Michael chose his words carefully, "how would you feel about continuing the current treatment without moving to the advanced protocol Elizabeth mentioned?" Lily's brow furrowed in confusion. "But she said the advanced one might be even better, that it might actually fix some of the damage instead of just stopping more from happening." "It might, but it's even newer with less testing behind it." Lily studied her father's face, her perceptiveness cutting through his careful neutrality. "You don't trust Elizabeth anymore. Something changed." Michael sometimes forgot how intuitive his daughter could be, how easily she read the subtle shifts in his mood and perspective. "I learned some new information about Armstrong Biomedical's business plans. It raises questions about Elizabeth's priorities." "What kind of business plans?" "They're preparing to sell stock to the public for the first time. Having successful cases like yours helps them look good to investors." Michael kept the explanation simple but honest, respecting Lily's intelligence. It creates a potential conflict between what's best for their business and what's best for you specifically. Lily considered this information with surprising sophistication. "But the medicine is still working, right? That's not fake or anything." "No, the medicine's effectiveness is real. Your test results confirm that." "So even if Elizabeth wants me in the advanced protocol, partly because it helps her company, it might still help me too." Lily's logic cut straight to the heart of the matter. Couldn't both things be true at once? The question in its childlike directness forced Michael to confront the nuance he'd been struggling with. Both things could indeed be true simultaneously. Elizabeth could have corporate motivations while still genuinely wanting to help Lily. The two weren't mutually exclusive, despite his instinctive desire to categorize her intentions as either purely altruistic or purely self-serving. Yes, both could be true. Michael acknowledged the wisdom in his daughter's perspective. But when doctors or researchers have conflicts of interest, it can affect their judgment about risks and benefits. That's why disclosure is so important. Did Elizabeth lie about anything? Not directly. She just didn't mention the IPO when discussing her interest in moving you to the advanced protocol. Michael sighed, recognizing how this might seem like a minor omission from Lily's perspective. In medical research, transparency about potential conflicts is considered essential. Lily nodded slowly, processing this adult complexity with remarkable maturity. I think you should talk to her again. Tell her why you're worried. I already told her my concerns this morning. No, I mean really talk to her, not just about business stuff. Lily's emphasis revealed her deeper understanding of the personal dynamics at play. She tries to act all professional and CEO-like, but when she talks about her sister, she's different, more like a regular person. The observation was surprisingly insightful, capturing something about Elizabeth that Michael had glimpsed but never fully acknowledged the vulnerability beneath her polished corporate exterior. Maybe you're right. Michael checked his watch, realizing they needed to leave for school. We'll figure it out. For now, let's get you to school before that amazing science project is late. The routine of the school day provided welcome structure, allowing Michael to process his concerns while completing his regular shifts at Boston Memorial. His colleagues had noticed the improvement in his demeanor over the past weeks, the reduced stress that came from seeing Lily thrive and knowing her medical care was fully covered through the trial. During his lunch break, Michael found himself researching Catherine Armstrong, curious about the sister whose memory had so profoundly shaped Elizabeth's life and career. There wasn't much available, just a brief obituary from 30 years earlier and a few mentions in articles about Elizabeth's philanthropic work. The obituary contained a photo that made Michael pause, a small, serious-faced girl with the same intense eyes as Elizabeth, seated in a hospital bed with medical equipment surrounding her. The resemblance to Lily in similar settings was striking, not in physical appearance, but in the determined expression, the refusal to be defined by illness. The parallel Elizabeth had drawn wasn't simply professional interest in a similar medical case. It was a deeply personal recognition of a kindred spirit. This didn't erase the conflict of interest concerns, but it added crucial context to Elizabeth's motivations. By the time Michael finished his shift, he had made a decision. Before picking up Lily from her after-school program, he drove to Armstrong Biomedical, arriving unannounced at the gleaming headquarters. The receptionist recognized him immediately. Mr. Hayes, Miss Armstrong is in a board meeting. She didn't mention you were coming today. She wasn't expecting me, but I need to speak with her when she's available. Michael's tone was polite but firm. I'll wait. The meeting could run several hours. The receptionist seemed uncertain how to handle this deviation from protocol. Perhaps I could schedule an appointment for tomorrow. I'll wait, Michael repeated, taking a seat in the lobby. 40 minutes later, Elizabeth emerged from an elevator, clearly having been alerted to his presence. Her expression was guarded but curious as she approached. Michael, this is unexpected. I need to speak with you. Privately. Michael stood, meeting her gaze directly. About Catherine the IPO and what you really want from Lily's participation in the advanced protocol. A flicker of surprise crossed Elizabeth's face, quickly masked by professional composure. My office, then. They rode the elevator in silence, the tension between them palpable. Elizabeth's office occupied the building's top floor, a corner space with panoramic views of Boston, decorated with minimalist elegance, that spoke of refined taste rather than ostentatious wealth. Elizabeth closed the door behind them, then turned to face Michael. I assume you've been doing additional research. I found Catherine's obituary, saw her photo. Michael didn't soften his directness. The parallels between her and Lily go beyond their medical conditions. Elizabeth moved to her desk, her fingers brushing against a small framed photo, the only personal item in the otherwise austere space. Catherine was exceptional, brilliant, determined, unwilling to let her illness define her. She looked up, meeting Michael's gaze. Like Lily. That's why you've taken such a personal interest, beyond the medical case, beyond the corporate benefits for your IPO. Michael stepped closer, examining the photo Elizabeth had touched, the same serious-eyed girl from the obituary. Lily reminds you of Catherine. Yes. The simple admission seemed to cost Elizabeth something, a crack in the carefully constructed, professional facade she maintained. When I met Lily in the hospital that night, it was like seeing a ghost. The same intelligence, the same resilience, even some of the same expressions. And that's influencing your medical judgment about her treatment. Elizabeth didn't deny it. Perhaps, but not in the way you fear. If anything, it makes me more cautious, not less. I wouldn't risk Lily's health for corporate gains or clinical validation. Not when I see so much of Catherine in her. The sincerity in her voice was difficult to dismiss, yet the conflict remained. The advanced protocol, is it truly Lily's best option, or are you accelerating the timeline for the IPO? Both. Elizabeth's candor was unexpected. The advanced protocol represents our most promising approach based on all available data. And yes, having Lilly enrolled would strengthen our position with investors. Those realities exist simultaneously. You should have disclosed the IPO timing up front. You're right. Elizabeth conceded the point without defensiveness. I should have. I convinced myself it wasn't relevant to the medical decision-making, but that was self-serving. I apologize. The straightforward apology caught Michael off guard. He had expected corporate justification, not personal accountability. What happens if I decline the advanced protocol for Lily? The question cut to the heart of his concerns. Would she still receive the same level of care and attention in the standard trial? Absolutely. Elizabeth's response was immediate and firm. My commitment to Lily's treatment isn't conditional on your acceptance of the advanced protocol. She will receive the highest standard of care regardless. And your personal oversight would continue unchanged. Elizabeth moved from behind her desk, reducing the physical barrier between them. Michael, I understand why you're questioning my motives. In your position, I would do the same. But whatever you decide about the advanced protocol, my priority remains Lily's well-being. The tension in Michael's shoulders eased slightly, though his caution remained. I need complete transparency moving forward. About everything, medical considerations, corporate interests, even your personal connections to the case. Agreed. Elizabeth extended her hand, the gesture both professional and conciliatory. No more undisclosed conflicts or considerations. Michael accepted the handshake, feeling they had reached a new understanding. Not blind trust, but a clearer recognition of the complex motivations driving their unusual partnership in Lily's care. I'll review the advanced protocol documentation again. Michael's decision was forming, shaped by this conversation, but not yet finalized. This time with full context about all the factors involved. 3 days later, after careful reconsideration and lengthy discussions with both Lily and Dr. Abernathy, Michael agreed to the advanced protocol. The potential benefits for Lily's kidney function outweighed his concerns about Elizabeth's conflicted motivations, particularly now that those conflicts were explicitly acknowledged. The advanced treatment began the following week with enhanced monitoring and a modified dosing schedule. As promised, Elizabeth remained personally involved, attending every evaluation and reviewing results alongside Michael and Dr. Thornton. 6 weeks into the advanced protocol, the results exceeded even the most optimistic projections. Lily's kidney function showed not just stabilization but measurable improvement. Rejection markers had decreased significantly. Most importantly, her quality of life had transformed, energy levels normal for her age medication, side effects virtually eliminated, and an emotional resilience that came from reduced physical suffering. After reviewing Lily's latest results, Elizabeth found Michael in the hospital cafeteria while Lily was completing her final test for the day. The numbers are remarkable. Elizabeth slid into the seat across from him, her usual corporate polish softened by genuine enthusiasm. Dr. Thornton says he's never seen such comprehensive improvement in rejection markers. It's exceeding expectations. Michael's cautious nature had gradually given way to measured optimism as Lily's improvements continued. Her creatinine levels are better than they've been since the first 6 months post-transplant. The advanced protocol was the right choice. Elizabeth didn't phrase it as a question. Medically, yes. Michael met her gaze directly. Though I still have concerns about the corporate influence on clinical decisions. Fair enough. Elizabeth accepted the criticism without defensiveness. The IPO is moving forward next month. Lily's case will be highlighted in the investor presentations, anonymized, of course. I assumed it would be. Michael's tone wasn't accusatory, merely acknowledging the reality they both understood. As long as it doesn't affect her care. It won't. Elizabeth hesitated, then continued with uncharacteristic uncertainty. There's something else I wanted to discuss, a foundation I'm establishing separate from Armstrong Biomedical, for children with kidney disease. Michael raised an eyebrow, waiting for her to continue. The Catherine Armstrong Foundation, focused on quality of life improvements beyond just medical treatment, educational support, recreational programs designed for children with health limitations, family resources. Elizabeth's passion was evident as she outlined the concept. I'd like Lily to be involved, not as a patient or test case, but as a consultant of sorts, helping design programs that would actually benefit children in her situation. The request was unexpected. That's not what I anticipated. Lily has insights that adults, even medical professionals, often miss. She understands what matters most to children managing chronic conditions. Elizabeth leaned forward slightly. This isn't about Armstrong Biomedical or the IPO. It's about creating something meaningful from Catherine's memory and Lily's experience. Michael studied Elizabeth carefully, searching for hidden corporate motivations but finding only personal sincerity. I'd need to discuss it with Lily. It would be her decision. Of course. I wouldn't want her involved unless she was genuinely interested. Elizabeth smiled slightly. Though given her enthusiasm for all things medical and scientific, I suspect she might be. Why now? Michael's question went beyond the timing of the foundation proposal. You could have established this years ago. Elizabeth's expression softened with unexpected vulnerability. Because before meeting Lily, the grief was still too raw, despite the decades that have passed. Catherine was a hypothesis, a memory, driving my work, but not a fully realized person anymore. She paused, collecting herself. Seeing Lily, her determination, her intelligence, her refusal to be defined by her condition, it brought Catherine back in a way that finally feels healing rather than painful. The admission revealed a depth to Elizabeth's connection with Lily that transcended both clinical interest and corporate strategy. It didn't erase the complex ethical considerations or potential conflicts, but it added a profoundly human dimension that Michael couldn't dismiss. I'll talk to Lily about the foundation. Michael's response acknowledged the personal significance without overlooking the professional boundaries still necessary. But regardless of her decision, I want to ensure we maintain clear lines between her medical care and any other involvement with you or Armstrong Biomedical. Absolutely. Elizabeth nodded, accepting the parameters. The advanced protocol continues regardless, with all the same oversight and transparency. Their conversation was interrupted by Lily bounding into the cafeteria, her energy levels unrecognizable from the fatigued child of just months earlier. Dad, Dr. Thornton says my kidney is actually getting better, not just staying the same. Her excitement was contagious, her face flushed with health and happiness. He said the advanced medicine is repairing some of the damage. As Lily launched into an enthusiastic explanation of her latest test results using medical terminology with the confidence of a young physician. Michael caught Elizabeth watching them both, her expression a complex mixture of professional satisfaction, personal connection, and a wistfulness that spoke of her own lost sister. In that moment, Michael understood that their unusual relationship would continue to evolve, not as the straightforward doctor-patient dynamic he had initially expected, nor as the corporate clinical partnership he had later feared, but as something more nuanced. A collaboration built on shared goals despite differing perspectives, mutual respect despite lingering caution, and ultimately a genuine commitment to Lily's well-being, from both a father who would sacrifice anything for his daughter and a CEO whose life's work had been shaped by a similar child she couldn't save. It wasn't perfect. The potential conflicts hadn't disappeared. But perhaps, as Lily had intuitively suggested weeks earlier, multiple truths could coexist. Elizabeth Armstrong could be both a brilliant businesswoman, positioning her company for maximum market value, and a person driven by deeply personal motivations to advance medical science. Her interest in Lily could simultaneously serve corporate objectives and genuine care. And Michael could both maintain his protective caution and acknowledge that sometimes help came from unexpected sources, even a billion-dollar pharmaceutical company and its complicated CEO.